Jeffrey Epstein, speaking. They say confession cleanses the soul. Mine was never dirty to begin with, or so I thought. I'm Jeffrey Epstein, speaking from the grave, not to beg forgiveness, but to lay bare the machine that built me. Listen closely. This isn't drama, it's design. I learned early that people don't look for monsters, they look for confidence. I dressed well, I spoke softly, I smiled like I had nothing to hide. That was the trick. I let people believe I was brilliant, connected, generous, a man who moved comfortably among presidents and professors, a man who belonged. What I really was patient. I didn't rush, I watched. Every room tells you who is weak. Every conversation leaks information. Loneliness, fear, need, hunger for approval. I collected those things the way other men collect money. And you trusted me because the world told you I was safe. That wasn't an accident. That was design. From the start, I understood the power of perception. I started as a teacher at Dalton School in New York, rubbing shoulders with the elite's children. It was there I honed my ability to blend in, to seem indispensable. Then came Wall Street, Bear Stearns, where I learned that money isn't just currency, it's camouflage. By the time I founded my own firm, I was untouchable in appearance. Philanthropy was my polish, donations to Harvard, MIT, the arts. People saw a financier with a keen mind for science and education. They didn't see the predator calculating every angle. I built islands of influence, literally, with Little St. James and my New Mexico ranch, places where privacy was paramount, disguised as luxury retreats. Guests came because of the allure, intellectual discussions, exotic settings, the promise of exclusivity. I never forced entry, I invited it. And in those invitations, I sowed the seeds of complicity. You see, when someone accepts your hospitality, they owe you a debt of gratitude. Gratitude blinds them to the shadows. Public records show my associations with figures like former President Bill Clinton and Britain's Prince Andrew, flights on my plane, visits to my homes, all documented in court filings and flight logs. But let me be clear, these are facts from unsealed documents, not accusations beyond what's verified. I used those connections to burnish my image, to make skepticism seem foolish. Who would question a man endorsed by the powerful? It was all part of the facade I sold you, and you bought it because it was easier than peering behind the curtain.
People imagine crimes as moments. They're wrong. Crimes are systems. I didn't need violence. Violence draws attention. I needed dependence. I offered help that came with invisible strings, a place to stay, a ride, an opportunity. Nothing felt forced at first. That's what makes it work. When someone owes you everything, you don't have to threaten them. They threaten themselves. I trained people to believe silence was survival, that speaking would cost them what little stability they had. And when shame does the work for you, your hands stay clean. I knew exactly what I was doing. Every step, every boundary crossed slowly enough to feel inevitable. That's guilt you don't wash off. This was grooming at its core, not sudden, but insidious. I targeted vulnerability, young women from broken homes, aspiring models, students chasing dreams. Public court documents from my cases detail how recruiters like Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted in 2021 for her role, brought them in under the guise of legitimate jobs, massages, or educational opportunities. It was a network, methodical and layered. First, build trust with small favors, then escalate obligations. Psychological coercion was my tool. It left no bruises, but bound tighter than chains. I exploited economic disparity. Many came from places where a few $100s meant survival. I paid for schooling, travel, introductions to influential circles. In return, loyalty. The system was self-perpetuating. Those ensnared often became recruiters themselves, normalizing the cycle. It wasn't about force. It was about making alternatives unthinkable. Federal investigations, as outlined in the 2019 indictment, revealed how this web spanned states and countries, using private jets to shuttle participants. But remember, these are established facts from trials and pleas, not speculation. The beauty or horror of it was invisibility. No overt commands, just implications, a raised eyebrow, a withheld favor, and compliance followed. I studied human behavior like a science, drawn from psychology texts I'd collected. It was calculated, erode self-worth, inflate dependence, ensure isolation. When victims internalized the blame, my control was absolute. That's how empires of exploitation endure, not through spectacle, but subtlety. Here's the ugliest truth. I wasn't hiding. I was hiding in plain sight. Private planes, mansions, dinner tables with powerful people. When immoral behavior happens around wealth long enough, it stops looking immoral. It becomes complicated. It becomes none of my business. It becomes I don't want to know. I exploited that cowardice. I surrounded myself with prestige because prestige disinfects suspicion. People assumed someone else had vetted me. They assumed the system worked. The system didn't fail. The system worked for me. Normalization was my greatest ally. In elite circles, Wall Street galas, academic conferences, philanthropic boards, deviance blends into the background if wrapped in opulence. My New York townhouse, bought for a song from Les Wexner, as public property records confirm, hosted gatherings where boundaries blurred under the veneer of sophistication. Guests included scientists like Marvin Minsky and Stephen Hawking, as noted in flight logs and emails from court exhibits. These associations lent credibility. No one probed deeper because association with genius implied virtue. The media played a role too. Early profiles painted me as a mysterious billionaire, eccentric but brilliant. When whispers surfaced, wealth muffled them. Legal loopholes helped, non-disclosure agreements, settlements buried in civil suits. The 2024 to 2026 unsealed Epstein files from the Jeffrey versus Maxwell case and DOJ releases detail emails and memos showing how influence peddling delayed scrutiny. But these are verified documents, not hearsay. Society's selective blindness fueled it. Power protects its own. Questions about ethics evaporate in the glow of status. I didn't invent this, I mastered it. When you're dining with Nobel laureates or flying with heads of state, impropriety seems implausible. That's the dirt. Evil doesn't thrive in darkness alone. It flourishes in the light of willful ignorance.
When the law finally caught up to me the first time, I learned something far more dangerous than fear. I learned the price of consequences. It was cheap. A deal was made, paperwork signed, language twisted. Justice wasn't blind, it was negotiable. I walked away with my life mostly intact, my money untouched, my access preserved. That moment changed me, not because I felt relief, but because I felt confirmation. I believed I had proven something fundamental, that rules are for people without leverage. That belief was my greatest crime. The 2008 Florida plea deal is a matter of public record. Charged with procuring minors for prostitution, I pled to lesser state charges, serving 13 months in a work release program. U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, later Labor Secretary, oversaw it, as confirmed in congressional hearings. Critics called it a sweetheart deal. I saw it as validation. High-powered lawyers twisted statutes, emphasizing my cooperation, while victims' voices were sidelined. Post-release, I resumed life among the elite. Registrations as a sex offender were formalities. My Virgin Islands residency exploited jurisdictional gaps. The DOJ's 2021 report on the plea deal highlighted non-prosecution agreements, shielding potential co-conspirators. This wasn't justice, it was transaction. It emboldened me, proving wealth buys deferment. Leverage, financial, social, turns law into a marketplace. That's the lesson. Impunity isn't accidental, it's engineered. I told myself I was smarter than everyone else, that scrutiny would fade, that time would erase noise. I was wrong. Survivors don't disappear just because you ignore them. Journalists don't forget just because you intimidate them. The illusion cracked, and when it did, I didn't feel remorse. I felt irritation. That's how broken my compass was. I wasn't angry that harm was done. I was angry that my control was slipping. Sit with that. Arrogance was my blind spot. After 2008, I doubled down, assuming the system would shield me indefinitely. But Virginia Jeffrey's 2015 lawsuit, unsealed in batches through 2026, chipped away. Reporters like Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald exposed the plea deal's flaws in 2018, sparking federal reinvestigation. Survivors' testimonies in court, factual and unembellished, built the case. I dismissed it as noise, believing my network, lawyers, PR firms would contain it. But lies compound. When the 2019 arrest came on charges of sex trafficking, as per the Southern District of New York indictment, my self-deception shattered. No regret for the lives altered, only frustration at the machinery failing. That's the pathology, detachment from humanity, viewing people as assets. Once the world was watching, everything changed. The same silence that protected me became evidence. The same deals that saved me became questions. People stopped assuming I was untouchable, and suddenly I was just a man, a guilty one. I had spent years engineering a reality where accountability didn't exist. Turns out it was fragile. The 2019 charges peeled back layers. Searches of my properties yielded evidence, photos, notes, cash, detailed and affidavits. Media scrutiny amplified survivors' stories, turning whispers to roars. My bail denial signaled the end. Isolation in jail stripped the facade. The system I'd gamed turned, exposing how elite protection crumbles under sustained pressure. Fragility lay in over-reliance on complicity. When it broke, so did I. If you're waiting for regret, don't. Regret implies morality. What I have is exposure. I wasn't a glitch in the system. I was a product of it. I didn't operate alone. I operated with permission, spoken and unspoken. And if you think removing one name fixes the disease, you haven't been paying attention. The machinery persists. Unequal justice, influence over institutions, normalization of power abuses. Public records from ongoing probes like UK inquiries into associates show the web extends. No apology here, just truth. The system breeds successors. I'm a motherfucker. I'm the worst person to walk on planet Earth.